There is a wonderful flower show that is ongoing in Cathedral Road in Semmozhipunga or the Botanical Garden. Many of the websites and some of the media have reported that this is the first ever flower show in the city. I could not help laughing when I read it. After all, we have had a record of flower shows in this city from 1835. Let us see what that history is all about. The British in Madras were avid gardeners, despite the weather, and some of them got together and decided to form a horticultural society. Their leader was the botanist Dr. White, and the Horticultural Society came into existence in 1835. It was later renamed the Agri Horticultural Society. The government gave it 22 acres of land on lease by the cathedral, where the present day Cathedral Road is. And that became the location of the Horticultural Society gardens. In the midst of this garden, there was a beautiful period bungalow donated by the Raja of Sivaganga. And that is where fertilizer, seeds, literature, and other things on gardening would be sold. Besides this, there were fountains, lovely trees, plants, flower beds, and water cascades, and so many other things to delight in. Sometime in the 1840s, the government decided to lay Cathedral Road, and as a consequence, the Horticultural Society gardens got divided into two parts. The northern part, besides the cathedral, was where the Horticultural Society had its offices. And on the southern part, by the side of where T Nagar would develop later, came up the society's gardens. This was a beautiful piece of wilderness with several age-old trees in it. And it was here that the Agri Horticultural Society would begin its flower shows. They started in 1835 itself, and they continued for a long, long time, right into the 1970s and 80s. They were a very popular event held usually in the month of February each year. The governor of Madras would usually come and inaugurate the Horticultural Society's flower show, and flowers would come from various government departments, the governor's residence, and all the private residences that had gardens. Competitions would be held among various categories, and medals would be given as well. It was a fantastic, colorful spectacle. Tickets would be sold for attending the Horticultural Society's flower show, and when you went in, you saw a massive tent inside which ferns and foliages, plants that did not require much sunlight, were kept. And all around, outside this tent, would be the rest of the flowers. Big business houses like Spencer's and Oaks and Company would put up tents to demonstrate how cigars were rolled. And there were diaries which would demonstrate how butter could be churned and then stored in tins. The governor's band would play music for the entertainment of all the visitors. From 1923 onwards, a much bigger flower show began to be held in the city, and that was conducted by the Corporation of Madras. The corporation had, beside the Ripon building, 116 acres of land, which was a vast park known as People's Park. And inside the People's Park was a small garden known as My Lady's Garden. This had the status of being the mayor's private park. And this was where the mayor would hold his or her tea parties, civic receptions, welcomes to dignitaries, etc., etc. My Lady's Garden still survives, though People's Park has vanished. To access it, you need to go down Sydenham's Road, which is today known as Raja Muttaya Salai, and take a turn towards the Nehru Stadium, and you will come to My Lady's Garden. Inside it are lovely flowers and trees, and it is maintained beautifully. There are also some lovely statues. There is a statue titled Prosperity, which is that of a woman holding two children. There is a letter writer who is writing something to someone. And then there is Flora, the Greek or the Roman goddess of horticulture. She stands in the middle of a stepped platform, and it was around her that the flower show would come up every year. The governor would normally come and inaugurate the flower show at the invitation of the mayor. Both the Horticultural Society's flower show and the mayor's flower show in My Lady's Garden received wide publicity in the press, not just of Madras city, but in international press as well. Flowers would come in from everywhere, and it encouraged, these flower shows encouraged people to grow them, grow gardens, and to tend to plants in their own houses and wherever they worked. It promoted a green initiative. Sadly, with changing times, both the flower show organized by the corporation and that of the Agri-Horticultural Society ceased to be held. And by the 1990s, all of this was forgotten. The Horticultural Society itself came into trouble. On one side, it had leased its land to the Woodlands Drive-In restaurant in the 1960s. That was a great initiative. You could drive your car into the Horticultural Society, sit in your vehicle, the waiters would come and place a tray on your window, take your order, bring your food and keep it there. You could eat and you could pay and you could leave. It was a great institution of the city. That was closed in 2008. And with real estate always coming under the political scanner, the Horticultural Society became the subject of litigation. The government eventually had to take over much of the land. Today, the portion that is on the right side of Cathedral Road as you come from Mount Road to Mylapore is called the Semmori Punga, and the part that abuts Lloyd Road is called Sengandal Punga, and both of them are maintained very well. It is very interesting to see that the flower show has come back to exactly where it started. But why should the corporation not revive its flower show in My Lady's Garden? It would promote a great gardening initiative across the city. It is time for the corporation to think about that.